Gaza and the war in Ukraine, the special military operation. How do you see the contrast? Anything in the war in Ukraine that the Israelis could have learned before going in Gaza?
Ukraine is large-scale ground combat, a different kind of war, but there are some lessons. And I come at this question from this perspective. There are Russian officers who have been involved in this in the conflict from the get-go. In the conflict in Ukraine. They were involved in Mariupol, which was urban warfare. And they have taken a look at the Israeli tactics and they've said, you guys would get slaughtered if you fought the Ukrainians. The Israeli Defense Force would be slaughtered. They'd lose everybody because their tactics are just stupid in terms of large-scale ground combat. But the Israelis aren't fighting a conventional military force. They're fighting an unconventional military force. But, you know, their tactics are stupid, not because they're the wrong tactics, they are, but because they're being executed by a military not trained properly to execute them. The IDF is very sloppy. The concept of security is non-existent. Hamas is able to pop up, destroy tanks, kill Israeli soldiers. Armor is going forward unsupported by infantry because the infantry is scared. The Israelis are not a very good military. They're competent to a degree against an enemy like Hamas. But if they fight Hezbollah, and again, the expansion of this conflict that draws in Hezbollah will outclass them every way. Hezbollah has been preparing for this war. Israel's not ready for this war. Their troops are not motivated. There will be slaughtered if they go to war against Hezbollah. The only thing Israel has is an air force. Let's put it this way. If you took the Israeli air force out of the equation in Gaza, Hamas would kill every single Israeli soldier there. That's the truth, because the Israelis just aren't that good.
Is the Netanyahu administration looking for capturing Gaza in totality?
The humanitarian pause was a defeat for Netanyahu. Remember, the Netanyahu government said there will be no ceasefire, and they aren't going to trade, exchange prisoners for hostages, that they're there to defeat Hamas, defeat them politically, militarily, and they were unable to do that. And the implementation of the Dahiyat doctrine, this collective punishment, and you combine that with, again, we have to deal with another reality here. What Israel knew about Hamas in Gaza is no longer at play. Hamas, when they attacked on October 7th, captured the computer servers containing the Israeli intelligence about their assets inside Gaza. So Israel went blind in terms of human resources. They attacked the Unit A200 signals intelligence platforms. Israel went blind in terms of intercepting communications. So what Israel thought they knew about Gaza changed overnight. When they went in on October 7th, 8th, 9th, and thereafter, they're going in blind. They have to start all over. And how does Israel do this? Through an over-reliance of artificial intelligence. They have a targeting algorithm that they've developed where they've linked each house in Gaza to a specific outcome for Hamas. It doesn't mean that they're going to achieve it, but if you hit this house, this is what it does to Hamas. And they also know that this is how many civilian casualties will be accrued. So there is no, this is collateral damage. We had no idea so many people would die. This is deliberate murder based on target. It's called the gospel. I think the Jewish term is hasbara or something of that nature. That's in play today. This is mass murder, genocide by the Israeli government against the Palestinian people. And it failed. And so it failed on a number of fronts. It failed in regards to Hamas, but because it failed so egregiously, the Netanyahu government was under pressure from a domestic audience saying, hey, you're not succeeding. We need our relatives freed. We need the hostages released. The entire world reacted to this collective punishment, this indiscriminate bombing with horror, millions of people in the streets. The United States State Department, filed a memorandum, internal memorandum, a dissent memorandum saying the policies of the Biden administration are destroying the credibility and viability of America abroad. And so we started putting pressure. So Netanyahu had to agree to a ceasefire. He didn't want to. This was a political disaster for him. And so he was looking for any excuse to get out of the ceasefire. He found it. They're now back at war. He can't afford to have a second ceasefire. That would be the end of him politically. But he's failing militarily. As we speak, the Netanyahu government is being, the IDF, is being defeated in certain areas of Gaza. They've had to retreat from certain areas in Gaza because of the casualties they've taken. This is hugely demoralizing for their military. So Netanyahu is in his government are in a very dire straits in terms of their domestic political reality. There's nothing they can do to change the fact that Netanyahu's political days are over. He is the problem, not the solution. He will be removed from power, either from pressure from the United States or pressure from domestic, or both. But we need to stop talking about what Israel wants right now. Israel doesn't want anything. Netanyahu wants everything. He needs to be removed and a new, more legitimate Israeli government in place that speaks on behalf of the majority of the Israeli population, then can speak about what they want. They may not change their policies. Who knows? But I think, real politic will set in, and the Israelis are going to have to make adjustments. Economically, they cannot sustain this fight indefinitely. With hundreds of thousands of reservists mobilized who are no longer participating in the economy, with tens of thousands of Israeli citizens displaced from not only around Gaza, but in the north, forced to be resettled, no jobs. They're living off of the support provided by the Israeli government. The economy is faltering. Hundreds of thousands of Israeli Jews are fleeing Israel for more stable locations. This is a strategic defeat, a disaster for Israel, that if they can't find the way to defeat Hamas, and I don't believe they can, you can't defeat an idea, an ideal, especially one that resonates so strongly amongst not only the Palestinian people, but the entire world. It can't be defeated by Israel. So I think Israel won't get what it wants out of this war. We have to understand that they did not initiate this conflict. They didn't want this conflict. They weren't expecting this conflict. The Netanyahu government on October 6th had a policy that was predicated on the normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, the initiation of this new economic-based conception that was described by Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. Biden announced it during the G20 meeting in India, talked about the India-Middle East Economic Corridor. Benjamin Netanyahu bragged about it during his presentation to the General Assembly in the United Nations. This was the direction that Israel was going. Israel was also, under the Netanyahu government, making sure that there would never be a two-state solution, never be a Palestinian state. They were in the process of expanding operations to create new settlements in the West. And they thought that they had bought off Hamas and the Palestinians in the Gaza by increasing the number of work permits, that this perception of new economic viability on the part of the Gazan Palestinians linked to a relationship with Israel, an ongoing economic relationship, would preclude any precipitous actions by Hamas. So when October 7th came around, the Netanyahu government is faced with a whole new reality. And now they're adjusting to it. And this reality is 100% security, politically motivated. It's couched as a security reaction, but it's political. Benjamin Netanyahu was a politician already fighting for his political life prior to October 7th because of what he had done in terms of rewriting Israeli basic law regarding control of the judiciary. It was supposed to be an independent branch of government, and instead, under the new law, it would be subordinated to a politicized Israeli parliament, the Knesset. And the purpose of this wasn't to improve Israeli jurisprudence, but rather to prevent the prosecution of Benjamin Netanyahu on corruption charges. So, hundreds of thousands of Israelis were already in the streets protesting against this man. The Israeli president had said that the situation was so dire that Israel could be looking at an actual civil war. And then comes October 7th. And so you have this already unpopular prime minister now presiding over the greatest security failure in the history of Israel. This is bigger than 1973 Yom Kippur War. This is a absolute failure on the part of the Netanyahu government, but also Israeli intelligence and the Israeli Defense Force themselves. And so the entire leadership of Israel is at risk of losing political viability, meaning that they should and could possibly be removed from power at any moment. The only reason why they're staying in power is because the Netanyahu government now has declared war, or as they have said, war was declared on Israel by Hamas. And if you're in for a dime, you might as well be in for a dollar. So if you're going to go to war with Hamas, now you articulate goals and objectives that reflect this war status. And you say that Israel is going to destroy not only the military aspects of Hamas, the organizational structures of Hamas, but politically, Hamas will be eliminated. Hamas will never again rule Gaza. And if you look at it from that standpoint, Israel has failed across the board. When we take a look at the millions of people who are in the streets in cities around the world protesting in support of Palestine, they're protesting in support of Hamas. They may not admit they are, but the reality is they wouldn't be there if it weren't for Hamas. They wouldn't be there if Hamas hadn't attacked Israel and created this overreaction, or the opportunity for this overreaction. It's Israel that has done it to itself. Israel didn't need to invoke the Dahiya doctrine, named after the West Beirut suburb, which in 2006 Israel flattened as part of a new principle of collective punishment, that makes sure that any civilian population linked to a political entity that is poses a security threat to Israel, that they will be punished collectively to put pressure on them, to pressure their own political entity to stop doing what Israel objects to. It was done against the Lebanese to put pressure on Hezbollah. It failed miserably. And it's been done repeatedly against the Palestinians in Gaza to put pressure on Hamas. This is even prior to October 7th, and it's failed miserably. And it's failing now. This collective punishment that Israel has undertaken has turned the world against Israel. This is a victory for Hamas. We need to also point out that the Netanyahu government was vociferously against a two-state solution, a Palestinian state, said there will not be one. They believe in Eretz Israel, greater Israel, or biblical Israel. That doesn't include any notion of Palestinian statehood. And so right now, the entire world is talking about the absolute necessity of a two-state solution. Again, this wouldn't have happened without Hamas. Israel had taken thousands of Palestinians prisoner. They'd taken thousands more prisoner, treated them brutally, subjected them to torture, rape, murder. Nobody was talking about putting pressure on Israel to release these prisoners, these hostages held by Israel, until Hamas attacked on October 7th and took hostages of their own, which they use as a bargaining chip. This is a Hamas victory, not an Israeli victory. Israel is suffering huge political consequences. More pressure is put on Netanyahu daily by the families of the remaining hostages to get their release. And Israel is not destroying Hamas. Hamas military is fighting the Israeli Defense Force to a standstill in many parts of Gaza. They're inflicting very significant casualties on Israel. And remember, Israel says that their victory is defined by the total destruction of Hamas. And if Israel doesn't achieve that, then Israel is by definition lost. And Israel right now is not achieving this. So the Netanyahu government has achieved nothing. They've made the situation even worse for Israel, and they've made it worse for them politically. Netanyahu has a 4% approval rating. He had an emergency meeting of his war council the other night, and he concluded the business without holding the things he was putting forward up to vote. The point is, Israel's achieved none of its objectives, and it's not going to achieve these objectives. These objectives unrealistic, and the Netanyahu government isn't doing anything for the legitimate security of Israel. They're doing everything for their own political survival, and I think their days are numbered. I think pressure is being put on them internally from domestic political opposition and externally from friends and allies, including the United States, who are saying that it's increasingly clear that the problem here is Benjamin Netanyahu, and that Benjamin Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition government have to step aside, have to get out of the way.
When it comes to the situation that Israel was in before October 7, in terms of the relations with Arab states, with other countries surrounding Israel, how do you see it right now?
The fact is, Israel is in very many ways, because of its overwhelming support by the United States, the support that it gets from the United States, has become a de facto indispensable nation of the Middle East. And you combine that with the reality that, with very few exceptions, most nations in the Middle East are not pro-Palestinian. They're not supportive of the Palestinian Authority or a Palestinian state, and that Israel had exploited this antipathy amongst the Gulf Arab nations, for instance, amongst Israel's immediate neighbors, toward the Palestinians for their own good, leveraging the concept of the possibility of a Palestinian state that could never be reach manifestation because of the definition. This is the Abraham Accord. What Israel has said about a two-state solution, it's unattainable, unachievable, unrealistic, but it's there on the table. And the Arab nations who claim to be supporting Palestine, but who secretly don't, say, well, Israel's made a good faith effort here. Now we'll normalize relations with Israel, so we can get on with reaping the economic and geopolitical benefits of normalization. That all appears to be on hold, but nothing's fundamentally changed. The political reality of the situation is such that these nations have to take a stance that appears to be supportive of the Palestinian people, of a Palestinian state, but they are distancing themselves from Hamas, and they aren't cutting off relations with Israel, which tells me that if and when this conflict ends, and it will end, that there's a real risk that the nations that are lining up to support a Palestinian state today will slide back to their previous posture of either indifference or hostility towards Palestine. And this will be to the benefit of Israel. Now, the longer this conflict goes on, and the deeper the damage that Israel is doing to itself in terms of its how the world perceives it, could create a new political dynamic, a new political reality amongst these Arab states. And if that happens, then there will be a Palestinian state. There's no doubt in my mind. But if this conflict is brought to an end, and then the cause of a Palestinian state goes into endless negotiations by people who really don't have the best interests of Palestine in mind, we could find ourselves returning to square one, which then brings up Hamas, which is not going to quit until there is a Palestinian state. And I think that the failure of Israel to defeat Hamas empowers Hamas politically and gives them increased leverage to tell the Arab world, the Islamic world, that we will not go away. We will not quit. We will continue to resist. And that the best way to bring peace and stability to the region is to create a true Palestinian, independent Palestinian state, which includes Hamas as a political entity. You can't make Hamas disappear. If there were elections in the Palestinian, in the Gaza and West Bank today, I think Hamas would win overwhelmingly. The Palestinian Authority has no credibility, none, zero credibility. Hamas has all the credibility in the world because it's the only Arab organization that's fighting for the Palestinian people.
How do you see the possibility of Hezbollah getting more seriously involved in this battle? Is that possible, in your opinion?
Oh, of course it's possible. It's even likely, given what Hezbollah has done is it has maintained a extraordinarily high levels of pressure on Israel along the border between Israel and Lebanon. The purpose of this was to force Israel to divert resources from Gaza to Lebanon and to put strain, economic and political strain on Israel at a time when it was supposed to be singularly focused on resolving the Gaza crisis. Up to 70,000 Israelis have been evacuated from northern Israel. They have to be housed, cared for at enormous economic cost to Israel. Whatever economic activity took place in the north has come to a halt. So that's an unsustainable reality that Israel can't just allow to occur. And Hezbollah keeps ratcheting up the pressure. Israel right now has confronted Benny Gantz, the Minister of War, has come out and said that Israel has no choice but to turn its attention to Lebanon to compel Hezbollah to withdraw from the border. This is suicidal. Lebanon is as prepared for whatever Israel is going to do as Hamas was prepared for Israel. And Hezbollah is an organization that has far more military capacity than Hamas. It will be fatal for Israel to expand this conflict. And I think that's why it might not happen, is that the Israelis know that if they engage decisively with Hezbollah, they will suffer a decisive defeat. And that could be very problematic, not only for the Netanyahu government, but for anybody who's joined his coalition, his wartime coalition, like Benny Gantz and others. So it's a very dangerous situation, one where there is an absolute threat of an expansion of this conflict to draw in Hezbollah, but also one that the consequences of such expansion are so dire that it might be difficult for Israel to act on it, which is what Hezbollah is betting on, that Israel will make a decision to seek a ceasefire before they make a decision to escalate. Time will tell.
One of the countries that is so important is Saudi Arabia. How do you see their policy in Gaza? Are they looking for some sort of sanity, some sort of solution for Gaza?
Well, their official position and what their real position is might be two different things. Their official position is that they support Palestine, they support the Palestinian people, they support a two-state solution, and therefore they are opposed to the ongoing Israeli actions. Their unofficial position is they were ready to normalize relations with Israel to, offset the axis of resistance, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, Iran, the Houthi, pro-Shia militias in Iraq. Yes, because of China, Saudi Arabia, and Iran had normalized relations. But that doesn't mean that Saudi Arabia is going to roll over and play dead. It was not a Saudi surrender. And Saudi Arabia was very interested in ensuring that it maintain a dominant geopolitical position vis-a-vis the Middle East, and they were looking to do that by normalizing relations with Israel and creating the conditions where Israel would be able to insert itself into the Persian Gulf region in a way that helped offset, Iran's growing stature in these nations that are linked to the axis of resistance. So the Saudis are in a very, they're stuck between the horns of a dilemma right now. They can't continue to carry out a policy which, by any stretch of the imagination, is pro-Israeli in nature, normalizing relations, bringing Israel into the Gulf region to offset Iranian influence. And they can't ignore the new reality generated by Hamas's military operation on October 7th and what's transpired since then by ignoring a Palestinian two-state solution. So I think what Saudi Arabia is doing is buying time, saying all the right things, hosting a conference, but doing nothing, and waiting to see where the chips finally fall before they would decisively commit. Remember, Saudi Arabia's number one purpose for doing anything is to benefit Saudi Arabia. So they're not going to be looking for something that brings about in and of its own right regional peace and security. They're going to be looking for something that benefits Saudi Arabia. It may be something that benefits regional peace and security, but it may be something different. Saudi Arabia has a vision. I think they call it Vision 2030, about a new Saudi Arabia, new economic realities, new social political realities, and that's the direction that MBS is taking Saudi Arabia, and they cannot support anything that that threatens that vision, because that vision is about a redefining of Saudi Arabia. It's what its economy looks like, what its geopolitical posture looks like, and that's going to require a lot of money to make happen, and that money won't be there if Saudi Arabia does anything that causes a disruption to its oil-based economy, or fundamentally changes the balance of power in the Middle East, so that Saudi Arabia is compelled to take an action one way or the other. So this is a very, very dangerous situation, and one can always hope that the Saudis find a way to navigate their way through these troubled waters. I think it's important to point out that Israel wasn't the only nation taken surprise by Hamas's attack on October 7th. Saudi Arabia was taken by surprise, and Iran was taken by surprise. Prior to October 7th, Iran and Saudi Arabia were working together to create regional stability based upon, the emphasizing diplomacy over military confrontation. They had exchanged ambassadors, and they were, moving forward in a very coherent fashion to achieve, I think, their collective desire for regional stability. After October 7th, both Saudi Arabia and Iran are struggling to catch up to the reality of what happened. Iran certainly doesn't want a larger regional war. Iran doesn't want to be drawn into the fighting, and Saudi Arabia doesn't want that either. Remember when Saudi Arabia hosted the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic States to a conference, an emergency conference on Gaza? Iran participated. The Iranian president has flown to Riyadh and has met with MBS and other Saudi officials to talk about the Gaza situation. So I think what we're seeing here is that Iran and Saudi Arabia are making sure that whatever transpires vis-a-vis Israel and Hamas, that their relations will remain on track in terms of, positive interaction, conflict avoidance, peacemaking, and joint economic prosperity. So I think you're going to see the Iranians and the Saudis, working together to keep this conflict contained to Gaza and Gaza alone. It's a very difficult challenge. Look at the Houthi; they've basically expanded the entire Red Sea into a combat zone. and the support that Iran provides to the Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, that Iran provides to Hezbollah. This is real. But I don't think neither Iran nor Saudi Arabia are going to lose strategic focus. And the strategic focus right now is determined more by the peacemaking of China in bringing about a rapprochement between these two countries than how Iran and Saudi Arabia are reacting to what Israel's doing in Gaza.
When this conflict ends, is the Netanyahu administration capable of rebuilding their relations with these Arab nations, Turkey? Is that possible for the Netanyahu administration, or do we have to have a new administration in Israel who's capable of doing such a thing?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that Benjamin Netanyahu is one of the all-time great political survivors. And people in Israel have been trying to get him out of office for some time now, and yet he somehow manages to land on his feet. So you never want to underestimate Benjamin Netanyahu and his ability to control Israeli politics in a way that keeps him in power. Having said that, though, his support rate is at 4%. That's not sustainable. That's not viable. So I believe that there will be a change of government in Israel. I believe it'll be sooner rather than later, given the enormous negative consequences that have accrued since, the Hamas attack on October 7th. Netanyahu is the problem. He's the man who is asleep at the wheel, and you can't trust him to do the right thing for Israel, because what he's trying to do is the right
proven to be a lie.
Yeah.
Because we can't beat the Houthi, and we damn sure aren't going to beat the Iranians. What this proves is that America's fleet, all of its, dozen, aircraft carrier battle groups, can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's a waste of money, total waste of money. We have to be careful about getting sunk, losing a carrier. As Larry said, I'm an American taxpayer. Okay, so I got the USS Carney out there, the Aegis class, Arleigh Burke class destroyer. It's got 90 missiles, SM-2s, SM-6s, other things out there. And each one of them runs between $1.1 and $4 million each, depending on which missile you use. The Houthi have thousands of these drones and cheap missiles. They cost them $2,000, $5,000, maybe $10,000 for the good stuff. And the Houthi are just sitting there again. The guy from Mad Max, and they're going to launch these things, and the Carney's going to go detected, launch, shot, detected, launch, shot, detected, and now they're done. They fired off 90. And as Larry said, they don't have the tenders anymore. You can't bring up the ship that goes resupply in. They got to pull the Carney out. And then who's going to replace the Carney? Some other funky named ship that's going to fire off 90 missiles and have to go, and another one and go. There's only so many, missile destroyers in a carrier battle group. And when they deplete this stuff, the carrier's got to go because it can't stay there. Something's going to hit the carrier. And now here's the other thing. What have the Ukrainians been using that's driving the Russians crazy in the Black Sea? The underwater drones. The underwater drones. Well, Russia captured some of them. And I don't know if you saw it, Larry, but Russia just published photographs saying, we've just produced our own underwater drone. And Russia has really good relationships with the Iranians. So I guarantee you that if Russia produced an underwater drone, the Iranians are producing an underwater drone. And if the Iranians produced it, the Houthi have it. And so we're going to be sitting there going, shoot down missile, shoot down missile, shoot down missile. Holy shit, bad word again. Got to watch out. Got 20 underwater drones coming at me. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. We lost a carrier. 5,000 Americans are dead. This is the reality of the carrier battle group. It's a legacy system going back to World War II that has no application in modern warfare whatsoever. America has been exposed as literally the empty shell that we are. It's not so much about the Red Sea. The Strait of Hormuz has just been guaranteed. We just lost the Strait of Hormuz because the whole idea of the Strait of Hormuz was the perception that America could do something. Well, that's been exposed as a lie. So the Iranians are empowered. The Saudis and the UAE is going, I think it's time we have to rethink our strategic relationships here, because America can't defend anything. The whole aspect of what America was doing with power projection was the potential of action that creates deterrence. We don't have the potential of action. Where can we go, Larry? Where can we go? We can't go into Europe. We've proven that.
Yeah,
we can't defend the Red Sea against the Houthi. We think we want to hook and jab with the Chinese in the Pacific. Are we high? America's been exposed to this nation that spends $1 trillion a year on a military that can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, again, I had not really focused on the capability of the destroyers, their limited capability. It had never entered my mind to explore the concept of a expeditionary navy vice a forward-based navy. I made some assumptions that were completely wrong. And once you wake up to it, and again, I hadn't even thought about the Strait of Hormuz until you pointed it out. You're absolutely right. You know, the tactic is real simple. All any country has to do is assemble 300,000 drones capable of launching some sort of explosive device that can create damage on a maritime vessel, and then launch them in swarms. You're going to overwhelm the defense systems that the U.S. Navy has, and again, none of this is classified. It's all, it's wide open, and then you can start sinking ships. Now, the Chinese, everything the United States is doing out there off the coast of China is just ridiculous. The United States is trying to pick a fight that we can't even win. We can't even finish it. So, one of the articles I linked to into my piece was called "Rebalance the Fleet Toward Being a Truly Expeditionary Navy." That was eye-opening. And that was just published in September of 2023. So what we've got is the phrase I've used before. The United States has the most expensive military in the world. We've got one of the most expensive, least capable navies in the world. That's the shocker. And, Scott, what do you think? Why do you think they're delaying? Yeah, I mean, at this point, Yemen has done everything that in normal times, when we thought we had an expeditionary navy, we would have already launched. And we're not launching. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, because again, it's if you went in the ring with Mike Tyson, all right, you're expecting
I'd be out of breath from running.
Yeah, when he hits you, you're expecting to die. So imagine you're going in the ring with Mike Tyson, and oh God, and he just lines up and he hits you, and it's nothing. You're like, what the hell? Hits you again, nothing.
Yeah,
you hit him, he's hurting. You're like, I got this. See, America's Mike Tyson, but without the punch.
Yeah,
we've all hyped up. I likened it earlier. When I played football in college, all the linemen, I was a tight end, but I was originally a wide receiver, so I was a very small tight end. All the linemen, go in there and they bench press, and they all got the 300-pound club, the 350-pound club, the 400-pound club in terms of their bench press. I never got above 2 1/4, so I didn't earn any of the big T-shirts. But they're all out there. But it's like a guy that in college, is pumping up. He's got the 400-pound club, and now he comes back to the 10-year reunion. And he's got the 400-pound club T-shirt on there, and he's bringing people into the gym, and he's like, everybody's expecting him to lift 400 pounds, and he gets up to 250, and then he stops, and he starts talking and drinking water. And you're like, well, where's 400? Can't do it anymore. That's America. Yeah. Everybody's looking at expecting the 400-pound club, and you got a guy that can't bench 2 1/4 anymore. That's America. We don't want to act, because the second we act, we're exposed as a fraud. And all that deterrence goes away. Again, coming back to what Tony Blinken said, we have to deal with China from a position of strength. He just said that. But a position of strength means that we have to have the perception of capability. If we expose the fraud that we are with the Houthi, because Larry, again, mobile relocatable targets. That's a fancy way of saying mobile missiles. I did
move
that during the
around.
Gulf War. That was my thing, hunting scuds. We didn't kill a single one. Couldn't, didn't know how to do it. And we haven't gotten any better. And so we're going to engage now in a very expensive air campaign against the Houthi, and we're not going to kill anything. They're going to keep launching, and it just exposes us as a fraud. And the whole idea of, this potential is to intimidate the Iranians and saying, don't begin with us because you think you have mobile missiles, but we have the American Navy that's very good at hunting. Oh, wait a minute. We just couldn't even deal with the Houthi. So I don't think we want to pull this trigger, because the moment we pull the trigger, any pretense of American capability is gone.
Yeah.
The other thing is, this coalition we've assembled ain't much of a coalition. It will fall apart instantaneously. And then the most important thing is, what happens when the Houthi take out the Saudi oil fields?
Yeah.
We don't have an answer to that. So I think, we've done a lot of bluffing. The smart thing for the United States at this point in time would be literally, look, we made a decision. We're going to let the Israelis kill as many Palestinians as possible. So the smart thing to do is just tell Israel, suck it up for a couple weeks, kill as many Palestinians as you want to. And then come January, you got to let the humanitarian goods, because all the Houthis say is, we'll stop the moment you let humanitarian goods come into Gaza. Mm-hmm. Stop the killing, let the humanitarian goods in, and we will open this baby up. But what we're going to do now is empower the Houthi to come up with different terms, because now the Houthi look around saying, wait a minute, we could ask for more. It's like doing one of those business negotiations, and you find out that, you low bid and you could have gone for more. The Houthi are finding out that they have more leverage than they possibly, and they're still backed by the Iranians now, who are going to be empowered. This is a game. I use that term all the time. It gets me in trouble, but it's a game-changing thing that's going on right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, and look, the other day, the Houthis, they shot down a Reaper drone, a $30 million ISR platform. And I'd love to know what they shot it down with, how much money they actually invested to shoot down a $30 million drone, but I'll be willing to bet it was less than $500,000, which that's a pretty good return on investment. Yeah. And, I think that has to also be weighing on the military planners' minds that as Scott noted, one, we don't have the staying power. Two, when we have to pull out, it's going to make us look weak. Three, we're not even sure we can put ISR safely up in the area to find out where they're located, so we know what we're shooting. So it's not an easy task, and these damn Houthis, boy, they just won't cooperate. They won't put together fixed military bases that we can easily target. How dare they? Don't they know about that international based rules order? They're ignoring the memo.
Right. With Operation Prosperity Guardian, as the United States is calling it, Scott and Larry, I think you're alluding to and directly stating this point altogether, that the U.S. military is pretty hollowed out. It's the bark, no bite. But at the same time, this is quite the bark. This is a coalition of the willing. Last time that happened in this particular conflict, it was a Saudi-led U.S. from the rear coalition that did wage a pretty disastrous and very just genocidal hell on Yemen. That's not happening right now. And you're saying that it's probably not, there's probably not going to be a major strike. So why then even form this coalition, and what will happen? Because can it just sit and play at war like they do in the South China Sea, for example? Is that what's going to happen? I mean, it does baffle my mind a bit that all of this trouble is being spent on something that has absolutely no bite.
Well, look at what they sent. Canada's contribution, 3 staff officers. Britain, they've sent a ship that hasn't been able to get out of dry dock. And they're really worried that it's going to break down while it's out there in the Red Sea, and they're going to be spinning around in a circle, not able to do anything. This thing's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah. Again, it just come down to, I'm going to huff and I'm going to puff and I'm going to blow your house down. But we can't blow anything down, and we're huffing and puffing. And if you're going to say you have a capability, you should be prepared to do it. You should be prepared to follow through. The United States, I think, look, politics is a funny thing too. And Biden, somebody may make the decision to initiate a bombing campaign just because we have to do something, but it will be disaster because we can't sustain. It's very expensive to bomb. I just want people to understand that, sorting out the number of aircraft that we're going to have to sort out with sustained sorties, the fuel, the wear and tear on the aircraft, the bombs, keeping that air carrier in play, shooting down all the Houthi drones are going to be coming at them. We're going to bankrupt ourselves, and we can't keep that force in play. Hopefully, we don't lose anything. But the real thing is that we're going to find out. The Houthi will find out that we can't beat them. And then the world realizes they can't beat them. This is why I think they probably won't do it. But politics is strange. We are entering the really silly season of American politics right now. And Joe Biden's sort of in a desperate, he lost Afghanistan. He's lost Ukraine. He's losing Israel. Now you got the Houthi, which means you're going to lose Iran, which means, and China's watching this too. Basically, what we're doing in Israel is, in what we've done with Ukraine is, in a very short period of time, we've gone from the world's preeminent superpower to the laughing joke. That doesn't mean we can't kill people. Of course we can kill people. We can kill a lot of people, but we can't win. And that's the thing. We can't close the deal anymore. Yeah.
Can you imagine being a Chinese intelligence analyst in February of 2022? And you were asked to assess the ability of the United States to produce and supply 155 millimeter artillery shells. I suspect that Chinese analyst, or the Russian analyst for that matter, would have projected a far greater capability with respect to what the United States could do. And that would have created some caution. And now, once they've seen with their own eyes that the United States can't do it, we can produce maybe in 1 year what Ukraine would fire in 1 month. And so all of a sudden, these countries, Scott, it was a great analogy that we had built ourselves up like the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. And it turns out we're just a short little fat guy behind a curtain that a lot of the stuff we claim we can do, we can't do. And then the real sort of audacity is we've got U.S. military planners instructing the Ukrainians on how to fight a peer-to-peer war. Now, that's like going to some guy to learn how to shoot a rifle, and the guy's never shot a rifle. So you don't want to take rifle shooting instruction from somebody that's never shot a rifle. And, the reality is there's nobody in the world that's fought a peer-to-peer battle except for Russia now. And they've got ample experience doing it. And because when you read back one of the postmortems that the Washington Post did on why the counteroffensive failed, I was stunned that when they did the exercises beforehand, they did war gaming, tabletops. They left out the assumption about, well, you don't need fixed wing aircraft to provide close air support. And you don't need that rotary wing aircraft either that can also provide close air support as well as evacuate wounded for the battlefield. We'll just take those out of there.
Anything. I disabled the VPN, so hopefully this will keep it stable.
All right. Let's do our best. I was playing a voicemail message before when we lost each other, so let's try that one again.
Hi, Scott. Thank you for answering our questions while traveling through Russia. Now, to my question, I can understand the importance of Mykolaiv to secure Odessa once taken by the Russian army so that Ukraine does not pose danger to the Russian Navy around Crimea. But can you explain the strategic importance of the further northeast oblasts, Dnipropetrovsk and Kharkiv? Also, does the Ben Gurion project play a role in the recent Israeli
Oh, boy.
incursion into Gaza? Thank you so much.
There goes Scott, the dreaded spinning wheel. Well, hit the video image. What does that mean, hit the video image? People are just making stuff up. Hit the video image. Hey there. We don't have Scott right now, but you want to tell me what your question is, or just say hello while we're waiting for him to come back? Who is this?
Yes. My question is the following. A lot of Russians went to fight and left their job, and there is also, because of the economy of Russia is booming, there is a shortage to hire people. So would it be a good idea for Russia to propose each Ukrainian man who have a mobilization order, if they can make it to Russia, they will have a job or they will be able to study in the university rather than getting killed on the front?
All
That's
right.
my question.
All right, hang on there for just a minute because Scott is coming back now. Can you hear that caller, Scott? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I heard the caller. I just didn't hear the totality of the question.
All right, caller, if you could ask the question again, but keep it brief, please.
Yes, the question is, given the shortage in men of Russia because a lot went to the war and their economy is booming, could they entice Ukrainian men with mobilization order and tell them that if they make it to Russia, they will be given a job or an education? That's my question.
That's a good
Okay.
question. There's no shortage of manpower here in Russia. I mean, yeah, people are being mobilized, but unemployment is low. The industries are booming. Where they need manpower, they get the boost from Central Asia for menial labor jobs, etc. And the other thing is the last thing the Russians are going to do, while they do allow Ukrainians to immigrate in, it's a huge security problem. You don't want to open the floodgates that could be exploited by Ukrainian intelligence. So we know Ukraine has infiltrated a number of assassination teams in here. The ones who killed Daria Dugina, Alexander Dugin's daughter. They killed Tatarsky, the Russian military blogger. They just killed a Ukrainian defector, member of parliament who defected, assassinated him with a silenced pistol just the other last month. So I can't imagine a scenario where Russia is encouraging Ukrainians to come in and to incorporate them into what could be potentially sensitive positions that could lead to industrial espionage or things of that nature. Plus, there's just no need for it. Russia's doing just fine from a manpower perspective.
All right, thanks for the call. Here's another phone call, Scott. Let's try it and hope for the best. Hey there, you're on with our favorite weapons inspector in Russia.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ferrell. I'm calling from Chicago. My question for Scott is, I saw the video where you toured a mosque in Chechnya, and I was wondering if you could talk about how was that experience, and I know you also visited homes in that region in Chechnya, and how was was there anything new that you learned about Chechen culture, their dedication to faith, and also if you asked them about their thoughts or if you had any discussion about what's happening in Gaza with the folks in Russia so far. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your call. One of the things about Chechnya, to understand the history, Ramzan Kadyrov, who's the current head of the Chechen Republic, he's the son of Ahmad Kadyrov, he was the former mufti, head religious figure of the Chechen Republic, or the Republic of Ichkeria, that fought a war against the Russians in the 1990s and got their independence. And then when the Second Chechen War started, the Second Chechen War was basically where the United States and other Western powers were infiltrated in foreign Wahhabist fighters to try and create, a chaos situation in Chechnya to break it away from Russia as part of an overall effort to break up Russia. And it was leading to sort of this Chechen civil war. And Ahmad Kadyrov said, we can't have Chechens killing Chechens. There's only 1.5 million, of them. There's not a lot of Chechens, and their blood feuds are Hatfield and McCoy make the Hatfield and McCoys in America look like child's play. And when you have Chechens killing Chechens, it's a never-ending cycle of violence. And he said it has to stop. And he and Vladimir Putin sat down and worked it out. But you have to understand that this was a deeply religious man. They are Sunni Muslims. They practice a specific branch of Sunnism, Sufism, and you need to understand that to understand the Chechen people. To visit this mosque, which was built in honor of Ahmad Kadyrov, it has become the centerpiece of the faith in Chechnya. It's to understand Chechnya. So I was given a tour by the mufti of the mosque, the head man, and he explained the role of religion. He explained, the very peaceful nature of religion as practiced by the Chechen people. They don't want war. I mean, they're capable of fighting war, and they will fight ferociously, but they want peace. And the proof is in the pudding. And look at the peace that they've worked out with the Russians. They fought 2 bloody wars with Russians. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Entire cities were laid to waste. And yet today, Russia and Chechnya are not just at peace with each other, but those 25,000 soldiers that Ramzan Kadyrov assembled, they're fiercely loyal to Russia and Vladimir Putin because they recognize that Vladimir Putin's leadership, together with the leadership of Ahmad Kadyrov, helped create the reality of modern Chechnya, this thriving community that has rebuilt itself from the ashes. So, and Islam is at the very core of that. And it's you can't understand Chechnya unless you understand Islam. And touring that mosque and listening to the Mufti explain the role of Islam in Chechnya was a very enlightening experience for me.
All right. The next question comes from Anonymous in the Republic of Korea. I believe my country should disband the USFK. That stands for United States Forces Korea, Scott, in case you didn't know, and unconditionally surrender and unify with the DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and our weak economy is overly dependent on I'm sorry, did I skip a sentence there? Let me say that again. I was getting too cute with explaining the acronym. I believe my country should disband the USFK and unconditionally surrender and unify with the DPRK because our military is unable to protect the country from the DPRK and our weak economy is overly dependent on trade with the US, Japan, and China. I believe multi-party liberal democracy is a failure, and single-party socialism advocated by the DPRK is the superior form of government. Do you agree?
Look, I don't agree. I mean, I think, to each his own, I should say. North Korea is a state that developed in the aftermath of the Second World War as a communist state, a Stalinist style communist state, and it's maintained that single party structure, the strong leader. It's had difficulties, primarily, because of what some people would say are the inefficiencies of that system economically, but more recently because of the sanctions that have been placed on Korea. But Korea is in the process of changing that because of what the United States has done in trying to isolate Russia and trying to isolate China. The Chinese and the Russians have struck back with BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Economic Forum, which is now expanded, has 6 new members, and it's going to get 14 new members this year. It's becoming global in its reach. BRICS is linked to Russia and China, which means now that Russia has opened up economic relations with North Korea, that North Korea has an indirect access to the BRICS economy. And the same thing with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. North Korea's economy is going to be thriving. Growth. And meanwhile, South Korea is trapped in this alliance with the United States and Japan, which seeks to leech the profitability of the South Korean economy off into unsustainable military expenditures. South Korea will never be able to build a military capable of defeating the North Koreans. So the best option is peace. South Korea's got to figure out this on their own, and I think they will. They had a President Moon, that was pursuing peace, but because of the horrible policies of the United States, there's political change or momentum change domestically in South Korea. They now have a hardliner, but he's going to fail because he can't sustain this. So it'll go back, and hopefully they'll find an equilibrium politically that allows them to re-engage with North Korea. And North Korea will come at it from a position of strength. During Donald Trump was trying to exploit North Korea's delicate economic situation by saying, "Hey, we'll beef you up economically if you give up your nuclear weapons." Well, now North Korea has this nuclear weapons program that is strategic in nature, threatens the United States. And because of the open economic relations with Russia and China, they have economic growth potential that's, unmatched. And so I don't think North Korea is going to be, looking for the West to come up with a solution where they're going to do their own thing, and it's going to be the West that's hands and knees to them.
All right. Peace is the best solution. That's maybe a phrase for the ages. Keith in Denmark, do you think the U.S. is lying about Russia using North Korean long-range weapons in order to justify sending Ukraine NATO long-range missiles, i.e. missiles that can strike inside Russia?
No, I think that it was clear. First of all, when you say long-range weapons, I mean, it's what the definition of long range is. But it was clear that the Russians had agreed to purchase some North Korean heavy multiple launch rocket systems, and it appears that they have done so. And they're employing these weapons. The idea was to beef up heavy strike capability, and that's what they've done. Russia has some very capable systems. Russia's industry is producing them, but I think these are a type of weapon, area saturation with rocket systems that they can hit deeper in to take out enemy troop buildup areas. It's something the Russians, maybe had a gap in, and so they've filled that gap, and they're using the weapons just like they used Iranian drones, the Geranium-2s, the Shaheeds. The West can nitpick all they want. Russia's kicking the living crap out of the Ukrainians, and it just doesn't matter. The West, no matter what the West does, it isn't going to be enough. Russia has won this war. They're going to win this war. There's nothing the West can do to stop that outcome.
Next question is from, no, that's the same question. Next question is from Violet in the USA. Which country do you think is the main player in the Middle East that has historically prevented things from being totally in favor of the USA and Israel? Which of the countries that have recently said they support Palestine really mean it?
Iran. Iran is the main player in the Middle East that has historically prevented things from being totally in favor of the U.S. and Israel. Iran's backing of first Hezbollah, Iran's backing of the militias in Syria and Iraq, and now Iran's backing of Hamas has been the equalizer. But it's more than equalizer. It's actually tipped the scale in favor of the anti-Zionist coalition, the axis of resistance, so to speak. Iran is the only nation that's put its money where its mouth is. None of the Arab states have done that. So, kudos to Iran.
All right. We seem to have an internet connection. Let's keep our fingers crossed and go for another phone call. Hey there, you're on with our favorite weapons inspector on a shaky internet connection from Russia.
Hello, good afternoon. Calling from New Jersey. My question is, I wanted to ask Scott that Ukraine claimed that they shoot down Russian hypersonic missile. Is that a true claim, Scott?
There's no evidence to back this up. Ukraine's claimed that it shot down just about everything Russia sent into it, yet Russia is destroying everything it targets. There's no doubt that some of the advanced anti-air systems that Ukraine has acquired from the West have succeeded in shooting down a number of the geranium drones, but that's the goal. The Russians now have a tactic where they flood the zone, so to speak, with the geranium-2 drones, forcing the air defenses to activate. And then once Russia locates these with their intelligence systems, they strike using other systems to take out the destroy these air defense systems, and then they strike their targets. And this Russian approach has been very efficient. They're devastating the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians themselves have admitted Russia just gutted their defense industry capabilities, and Russia's starting to hit other deep strategic targets. The Kinzhal missile has yet to be shot down. There's no evidence whatsoever that the Kinzhal missile, which is Russia's hypersonic missile, has been shot down by the Ukrainians. When the Ukrainians provide physical evidence, it's not the Kinzhal missile. It's something totally different. So no, the Ukraine hasn't shot down any Kinzhals.
All right, next question is from Brad Arnold. Much like me, he has 2 first names in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When the Russian army gets to the Dnieper River, the Duran predicted that Ukraine would fall because of all the vital industry on that vital waterway. I say the West will double their bad bet. How do you think it will go down?
Well, I don't know how the West can double their bad bet. I mean, I don't know what you mean by that. Because let's put it this way. The West, when they provided Ukraine with military equipment, initially they drew down. So they went in, they took weapons that were already built, and they drew them down from their stocks and they gave them to Ukrainians. They don't have any weapons left to give Ukraine. They just don't. So you can't draw down. So the weapons aren't immediately available. Anything that'll come down in the future has to be built, purpose built. So money has to be allocated and resources have to be built. That takes time. That takes years. Ukraine doesn't have it. Ukraine needs weapons right now. These weapons don't exist. So how do you double down on this? This is the decisive year. Ukraine is bankrupt. They have no money. No money's flowing in. They can't pay any salaries. They have no weapons. They have no new weapons coming in. Denmark just said, hey, we're going to hold off 6 months to give you those F-16s. Why? Because they know in 6 months this war may be over and they're not going to send F-16s out to get shot down for no reason. So no, I don't think the West can double down. What can the West do? Send in troops? Which troops? Which troops are they going to send? American troops? American troops are going to move into Ukraine? 100,000 of them, 60,000 of which might be combat troops out of Poland. They'll be slaughtered. You will lose a brigade every 3 days. That means that basically in 2 weeks, every American will be dead, and we have nothing to replace them with because we have nothing left. Germany, they don't have an army that can get out of the barracks. The Poles, it's pathetic. They get slaughtered too. Russia's fighting a different style of war right now. It's a drone-based war where drones take the lead. We don't even understand this right now. We don't have tactics to deal with it. We come flowing in with tactics dating back to the 1980s, and the Russians will literally take everything out. So until we redefine our way of doing warfare to meet this new reality, it's like, you could have the finest cavalry in the world, and that might have been good in 1870 or 1880. But in 1914, with the finest cavalry in the world, when you charge forward and they brought out the machine guns, your cavalry got wiped out, got killed. The way Russia deploys drones and employs drones today is the machine gun to NATO's cavalry.
All right, Scott, let's try to get a few more questions in before we do the coin giveaway. And this is the New Year's coin that Scott is giving away to various people in Russia while he's traveling around. And on January 19th at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time, we'll be doing an episode, I believe, from a Moscow studio with Alexander, your host. Is that correct, Scott?
Yep, we'll do a NASA the Inspector where we will do a wrap-up of the of my Russian visit, and I think there will be a lot more interesting things to talk about at that time.
All right. So January 19th at 12 noon. Hopefully we'll do some 1 or 2 things between now and then, but I just want to tell people that's already scheduled, and we can pretty much rely on a good internet connection for that episode at least. Brian Egger in Wales. I remember reading about a year or so ago about how 2,000 ISIS fighters were taken from one of the camps and flown by U.S. helicopters to Afghanistan and close to the Iranian border. What has happened since then, and could this be linked to recent events?
I don't know if there's any truth to that story. It just seems very far-fetched that the United States would use their helicopters to deploy 2,000 ISIS fighters. The reason why I say that is I'm somewhat familiar with U.S. covert helicopter operations, and I know what it takes to do a black helicopter mission. And 2,000 ISIS troops ain't a covert mission. I mean, that is about as overt as it gets. So it's a little far-fetched. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories about how the United States created ISIS, and I happen to agree that we did facilitate the creation of ISIS, but it was more of an act of omission as opposed to an act of commission. What I mean by that is we sort of let ISIS happen as opposed to actually create ISIS. And so the idea that we have some sort of command and control authority over ISIS, I'm not buying. What we do is again, we allow things to happen that we could otherwise prevent. And so we let ISIS get away with things that we normally would interdict, but we don't in this case. And we may have other entities being allowed to supply ISIS with intelligence and things that to carry out the attack, for instance, that they carried out in Iran, or they claim to have carried out, but they would have done that in concert with CIA-controlled resources in Iran, but not with direct CIA. I mean, I don't think a CIA person met with an ISIS person. I think a CIA-controlled Iranian resource was given permission to work with ISIS to do this, but the CIA sort of went, we're hands off on this one. I hope that answered the question.
All right, let's take another question. This is from Alex G. in Los Angeles. Would you please evaluate the possibility of Iran possessing a conventional first strike capability against Israel's ground-based nuclear forces?
I had a discussion with an extremely senior Iranian government official, maybe the highest level of Iran, and we talked about Iran's conventional deterrence. I spoke about how the world is fearful of a potential Iranian nuclear program, et cetera, and I brought up the importance of conventional deterrence, and does Iran seek to possess that? And the short answer was yes. Iran, in pursuing its ballistic missile capability, is pursuing a deterrent capability. To have the hypersonic, long-range hypersonic strike capability gives Iran first strike potential against Israel, against the United States, against United States forces in the region. Are these weapons strong enough to take out the Israeli bunkers where these weapons are stored, or the silos? I don't know. I think their weapons are more geared towards striking other strategic targets like government targets, infrastructure targets, etc. On the belief that that's what's going to deter Israel, the certainty that Israel would be destroyed through conventional weapons as opposed to trying to preemptively destroy Israeli nuclear weapons. Because understand this, Israel has submarines as well. Those submarines are equipped with cruise missiles that have nuclear warheads. So even if you take out the ground-launched missiles, you're going to get nuked. So the idea is to convince Israel that even if they fire a nuclear weapon against Iran, that Iran has enough conventional power to physically destroy Israel. Therefore, the balance of terror offsets one another.
All right, let's do a phone call and then the coin giveaway. Hey there, you're on with our favorite weapons inspector. What is your very concise question?
Hi there. Calling from Germany. I'm a big fan, and I want to thank you both for this great job that you guys are doing. Thanks a lot. I have 3 questions.
No,
Brief
one question.
Okay, Kidira. I felt did he have did he suffer embarrassment because of the fact that he exposed his weakness in the public about trying to get his family off? I mean, I felt very bad. Also, that Scott was in that position. But how do you feel about it, and will it have repercussions for him that he tried to do that?
Okay, thanks for the call.
I think he's talking about the list of Ukrainian prisoners of war. Is that what he's talking about, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what he means.
Yeah, look, first of all, I don't think Kadyrov suffered any embarrassment from it. It is what it is. I'm not going to get into, trying to second guess or anything. I was graciously received by Ramzan Kadyrov, by the entire Chechen leadership. I don't believe they were trying to set me up. I believe that they thought that there might be some utility in what they were doing, but it became clear, both from my standpoint and from theirs, that this was not going to happen, and that's that. Kadyrov, what's there to recover from? It's over. It's done with. He's still the leader of the Chechen Republic. He's revered by the people of Chechnya, and I don't believe he suffered any dire consequences because of this. It's a minor hiccup in what was otherwise a fantastic meeting.
All right. As promised, the New Year's coin, a special limited edition made for Scott's trip to Russia. And that's what it looks like. It comes with a card. And we are going to do a giveaway right now for everybody who entered on... Hold on a second. Where is it? Why does this keep happening? Hang on. I'll find it again. Share screen. Okay, there it is. All right. So 570, as I'm speaking, even more entering, 580 people have entered this time, Scott. I think that's the most entrants we've ever had.
That's a record. That's a record.
It is indeed. This people love, they're lusting for this coin. All right, let's do the drawing to see who the winner is. And it's Lorraine Taleng Safi. Congratulations, Lorraine. Send us an email, info@ustourofduty.org, so we know how to send the coin to you. Thanks to everybody who entered. And if you would like to buy, well, we're not yet selling this coin, but
say that I don't know enough about the question to answer it properly, because I don't know if he's talking about domestic counterinsurgency, because that's a law enforcement thing, and I'm really not that familiar with it, or there's Lauren doing the happy dance, and or if it's a military thing. So I can't answer the question. I apologize.
All right. Better to say you don't know than to fake it. Theo in France, there have been recent reports that North Korean rockets have been used by Russia in attacking Ukraine. Is this Russia simply being pragmatic at the moment, or is there a military codependency developing between these two nations? You didn't use the word codependency, but you kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago.
Well, first of all, Russia will never be codependent with anybody. One of Russia's foreign policy objectives is self-sufficiency, and that's self-sufficiency across the board. So Russia will never be codependent, but understand that Russia is in the process of expanding its military from 900,000 to 1.5 million. So these are new formations being built up at a time when they're in this very intensive combat operation in Ukraine. And so, as Russia builds up, for instance, the 70,000 strong St. Petersburg military district, or reinforcing Arctic operations or the Pacific, or beefing up their presence in the Caucasus or in Central Asia, or getting forces prepared to deal with any threat from the Baltics. Weapons that would that could be sent to the front in Ukraine are being diverted to build up these new units. And so you're building up these units for long-term employment by Russia, which means you want the Russian equipment. When you have a table of organization equipment, TONE, it's going to be Russian equipment. But on the front, to meet firepower requirements, rather than, slow down the deployment of weapons to these new units that you've built, what they're doing is they're just plugging the gap with these North Korean weapons. It's a weapon of convenience. Russia will just bring in these North Korean weapons, and they're ready to fire. They're a unit. You bring them in. It ain't hard to do. You push a button, you salvo off stuff, you reload it, and that's that. And when the war's over, they can go ahead and put these systems in reserve, or they can scrap them or whatever. They're not going to need them. They're just they're a temporary solution, firepower solution to the military problem in the against Ukraine. But the real Russian weapons, the tornadoes and things of that nature, are going to these Russian units. So some are going to the front lines, but Russia needs a lot of firepower right now. This is a temporary fix to a temporary problem.
MC in the United Kingdom is our next question, our next questioner, I should say. How can the U.S. really say there's no evidence of genocide in Gaza? Do they have a special definition that excludes the destruction of the homes of an occupied people, or that can induce death by starvation, pestilence, and thirst?
Apparently we do have our own definition. It's an Israeli linked definition, meaning that anything that Israel does cannot be, by definition, genocide. It's funny how during the Battle of Mariupol in Ukraine, Russia was accused of committing genocide against the Ukrainians with these false allegations. They accused of, cutting off water, cutting off this, destroying that. All the things that Israel's doing for real, and magnified by, several orders of magnitude.